Welcome to the podcast of All Means All. In this episode, Beausetha Bruwer, Pamela February, Petra Auer, Federica Festa, and Ulla Sivunen will talk about enhancing minority languages for inclusion.
So, do you recognize this learner in your classroom? Does the situation sound familiar to you? Where a learner doesn't understand the language of instruction, what the teacher is saying, what's happening in the classroom, because the learner's language is different, home language is different from the language of instruction in the classroom. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to look at, and you may think, oh yeah, that does sound familiar, but what we're going to look at now is 4 different scenarios where this situation happens on a daily basis in classrooms around the world. First up, we have Bio from Namibia, who is going to look at a classroom situation where the majority language, the majority of learners and the language of the majority of these learners is not the same as the language of instruction. Bio, can you tell us about this, please?
Elina is a grade 3 learner from Namibia, and she speaks Khoikhoi Govap at her home with her family, her friends, and the community. And she loves to speak her language with her friends because her language has a special click sound, and this is like music to her ears. Elina and her friends attend a school where Afrikaans is the language of instruction because Khoikhoi Govap schools are very rare in the area where she's staying. In Elina's school, her teacher uses Afrikaans to teach, and this makes it very difficult for Elina and her friends to understand what the teacher is saying. In addition to this, Elina also needs to learn how to read and how to write in English, which is even more difficult because English is only used in schools. But why is Elina in this situation? So in Namibia, the language policy stipulates that from pre-primary to grade 3, all learners should be instructed in their home language. English is then offered as a subject. In grade 4, it's seen as a transitional year where English becomes the language of instruction and all home languages is taught as a subject. Now, the objective of this policy were initially to promote equality among the national languages and also to help all Namibians become proficient in the English language and to help it to be implemented as the prescribed official language in Namibia. So although the language policy is written like this, it's not always implemented in this way, as we've seen now in the case of Elina. So statistically, it is shown that only about 42% of Khoikhoi Govap learners are actually instructed in their mother tongue. So as Elina's language is a Khoisan language, which is very different from Afrikaans, which actually has its roots in Germanic language, which the teacher now uses. It is also very difficult for the teacher to accommodate Elina and her friends in her class. So the teacher don't understand Elina's language, and she also struggles to explain content to Elina and her friends. And on top of this, she's not able to code switch to at least attempt to make learning easier for Elina and her friends. But this is not a situation that is the teacher's fault or the learner's fault. And it's a very common situation also that occur in Namibia because very few learners are actually taught in their mother tongue. So we have more cases as like Elina and her friends that are under situations forced to attend a school where their mother tongue is not offered. So the fact that learners are often taught in a language that is sometimes their second or third language it's very challenging for them to grasp the meaning of in the language, and it makes learning quite challenging for them. Sometimes these learners, their self-esteem and confidence in their ability to speak and write in the instructional language is greatly affected. Because when learning takes place in these environments, learners feel frustrated because they believe their own language and their culture don't have a place in the education system. The issue of being also looked down at from classmates that are more fluent in the language also often occur in these situations, and this forces the learners or makes them even more prompt not to want to express themselves in the language of instruction, because often they get characterized as underachieving or even being looked at as slow learners because they can't quite express them as the rest of the class. So the question then is, how can we implement a learning environment that can enhance different languages and can make learning possible for all the Ilinas in the classroom, so that they can also benefit from the education that they receive?
And I can imagine, because you spoke about Afrikaans and you also spoke about English. English would then even be a third language for Elena, and it's also a Germanic root.
Yes.
So it's as, if not more, different from her Khoisan-based language.
Yes, and she will need then at a certain point need to learn in English the same time as learning English, and that also goes for Afrikaans, learning Afrikaans at the same time that she needs to learn Afrikaans.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bio. So we are now going to look at our second scenario, and that is Federica. Now, Federica's situation or scenario is where it's an immigrant situation case where learners come from different countries, come to Italy to learn, to be taught in the school system. So tell us about that, Federica.
So in my scenario, Anson is a 15-year-old boy. He's Albanian, but he, with his family, migrates to South Africa when he was 4 years old. And so now he is native speaker of Albanian and English too. Now he is in Italy, and he is an unaccompanied minor because he has been recruited by a professional football team. Initially he enrolled in a scientific secondary school because he was very good in maths, but he failed. And now he is in a commercial vocational school. So what does this tell us? In Italy, we have 10% of foreign students, and we know that the law says that when they are lower than 18, they have the right and the duty to have access to the school, and they must be enrolled in the class corresponding to their age. But many schools refuse or disencourage their enrollment, so they often choose a vocational school. Also, in my experience, I work as a teacher in a professional school, and we have 27 different countries where foreign students came from. We also know that many students from between 17 and 18 years old, foreign students, they drop out of school, and this is because many times they fail or they are placed in a class below their age despite the law. And 1/3 of them, when they are 17 or 18, they leave the school. We know that Italian law and European and international documents tells that affirm the value of multilingualism and say that many national, regional, historical, minority and migrant languages enrich our common cultural heritage. But also we know and we see that schools still consider recent minority languages as a problem. These theoretical principles and policies are often not applied. In Italy, students, foreign students, directly go to mainstream classes, to common classes, and teachers ask them to only speak Italian. They can attend L2 courses that are provided in many schools, but not in all schools. And in secondary school, when you go to a scientific secondary school, most of the time you are the only foreign students, and so they don't have L2 courses to learn Italian. So the fact that foreign students go to mainstream classes give them the possibility to learn Italian quickly, but at the same time looks like a demand of cultural assimilation. Studies tell us that usually we need just 1 year to learn basic interpersonal communication skills, and we need about 5 years to achieve cognitive academic language proficiency. It's not so long time, but anyway, bilingualism is considered a disadvantage. And statistics on academic success show that foreign students achieve lower results compared to peers. I think that it's clear that teacher and maybe all of us have in mind a hierarchy of value of languages, and beyond the legislative directives and maybe beyond what we declare, a teacher declare, we know that if the students in the example would be an English students, the perception of teacher would be different. Also in Italy, the Constitution recognize minorities and protect minorities' languages. We have 12 official minority languages, but we choose just some of the regional languages as recognized languages. And so also the law say that we should apply the same rules to new minority languages, but that's not true.
Thank you so much. So that was very interesting. And I mean, not just one immigrant child at the school, but children representing 27 countries. Yeah. You have a whole global system happening at your school. Very interesting. So our third scenario is also from Italy. So here we have Petra. And this is so unique. It's the first time that I heard about this situation. So Petra's going to tell us all about a bilingual system that happens in Italy. Very unique system.
So Giulio is in his first year of primary school and he just started learning German as a second language. At home, he speaks Italian with his mother, his father, his sister Francesca, with his nonna and with his nonno. With all his friends from kindergarten, he primarily spoke Italian, even if it was not everybody's native language there. He learned some words in Albanian and Moroccan, but learning German is a very new thing for him, and he really struggles these first days of school because he does not understand anything the teacher tries to tell him in these first days of school. Where are we? Where is this scenario happening? We are situated in the autonomous province of Bolzano, a region in northern Italy bordering Austria and Switzerland. And it is characterized by a specific ethno-linguistic reality. there are 3 different official languages: Italian, German, and Latin. And due to formative historic events such as the annexation of the territory from Austria to Italy after World War I, and the oppression of the German and Latin-speaking minorities in the period of fascism, nowadays these 2 languages are officially recognized as minority languages within the Italian nation states. And as such, they are also protected by law. And this shows, for example, in a tripartite division of the education system according to the language groups. And this divided school system was established, of course, with the primary intent to protect the language and culture of the German and Latin minorities. So in reality, or in the everyday practice, we have schools in German, Italian, and Latin language. And children and youth learn the respective other official language or languages as a second or third language at school, but how this happened is very different from the 2 schools. So while the Italian and German educational institutions can be defined as monolingual schools, where the second language is taught as a subject for a certain number of hours per week, schools in the Latin valleys follow the so-called parity model. Here the lessons are held to an equal amount in German and Italian, and Latin is taught as a subject, creating a common trilingual school model. And coming back to the tripartite division of the schools on the territory, even though initially it was implemented in order to really protect these linguistic minorities, recently scholars address it also very critically as contributing to the creation of parallel worlds, because the strict separation hinders a daily contact between the children of the different language groups. And as it is the case for Giulio, who does not have any German-speaking friends, even though Hannah would live next door. She also just started her first year at primary school, which is located in the exact same building as Giulio's school, but their classrooms are in different floors, and the break time is not the same. And as the statistics can tell, the chance that Giulio and Hannah will ever become friends is very small, since a survey from 2017 showed that 90% of the interviewed youth stated having many friends of the same language group. But further, only 23% of the interviewed considered the co-living of the different language groups as a positive aspect of the province, and also only 20% identified the division among the language groups as being problematic. So it might be questioned whether the policies aimed at protecting the language minorities in the province really help, or if they rather hinder the creation of a multilingual society. And so here again, the question arises, how can we implement a learning environment that enhances different languages and makes learning accessible for all?
Thank you, Petra. So at this time, we want to give Ulla a chance to discuss certain strategies that she thinks can enhance the learning for the deaf child in the Finnish classroom. And so, Ulla, we give the time over to you. So, as all of them commented at the end of their sessions, how do we implement a learning environment that is conducive for all these learners to learn? And as we could also see that it is not that simple. When we spoke about, we said, oh, this topic is minority languages. You thought minority languages is this one child sitting in a classroom. And now you find out that this is not the case. And so we also see that a lot of the situations where this is happening is because politics brings us along, or what happens in a country and what the language policies say to address that. And as you were saying, Petra, maybe the aim is to support, but it can also hinder. And so the idea is, so what does the teacher do? What does the teacher need for this to happen? So what knowledge do they need? What skills and attitudes do they have to have? And also what resources needs to be there in order to enhance this environment? So now at this time, I invite all of you to give me some examples, maybe in your situation, where you have thought about, I think for my situation, this is what I would like to see happen. So we're not going to, this is not an exhaustive topic, so we're just going to touch on a few, maybe to give our audience this idea of this is the situation, and you've sketched it beautifully, but what can we do? Because that is important.
Okay. Teachers definitely don't need to be afraid that they need to know all these languages. So in the case with the Khoikhoi Gobab child, the teacher do not need to know the language, but the teacher do need to know how she can use the knowledge and understanding of language that the child comes to the classroom, and how she can use this home language of the child and the knowledge that the child have to teach the new language that the child needs to know. So work from that basis. She needs to have an understanding that this child comes with language knowledge, and use this then to teach the child this new language that the child needs to know.
So what I hear from you saying is acknowledge this child's language and work from that basis, as a start. Very good. Federica?
I think that it's important that teachers know that bilingualism is not a problem for learners, and also that it's a good thing that they continue to use their native language or their native languages to learn, also if they are learning a new language.
Yeah, that's good. So what I hear from you is like multilingualism is an advantage, because as a child learns one language, he uses that language to support the other language. And so with this new language that is now going to learn in this new environment, all these languages that he comes with supports that learning. And the teacher, if the teacher knows that and knows how to use that, how the one language supports the other one, it's a good situation.
Yeah, and they can encourage students to use their languages and not to ask them to use just one language, because often they think that it's better to learn a new language just using one language, but that's not true.
Yeah, and research has shown the important connections, brain connections that happen when using multiple languages and how the one language supports the other. Petra, do you have some solutions for us?
I would say teachers, like for the specific case, sort of for the scenario of the province of Bolzano, but I guess this might also apply to other situations, is that teachers should be open-minded for other languages. And especially in the situation of the province of Bolzano, they might also critically reflect their own language history and their attitudes towards the other languages, which in this specific case it's very important due to what happened in the past, and there are still some ongoing tensions. So the teachers should critically reflect about their personal attitudes in order to try to create or be more open-minded towards the other official languages, but also all the other languages, because there are of course not only different official languages in the situation of the province of Bolzano, but also new minorities, migrant languages, which make even a more complex situation, I would say.
Exactly, and so again, bringing this to the topic of this minority language, and you talking about teachers' attitudes towards languages and checking that attitude. And so this brings us to as we've said, is it a minority, is it a majority in your case, where the learners are, and also this idea of language status. So which status is regarded as better than the other or higher than the others, and that's where teachers, as you say, need to check that, because if we want our learners to thrive in our environment, we need to address the fact that your language is important as well, and I regard your language as important, and I see your language. And I think you mentioned the fact that using the language as part of the support in the structure of the classes, and also just recognizing it for what it is. For example, typically in some languages you would have the structure where it's the object, the adjective with the object, like in English, red car, and you could have where it says Oshi auto, oshi tiligane, which means car red, because I think in Italy, in Italian, you have the opposite. So once, you don't have to know the language, but if you know how the structure of the language is, and then you recognize that when the learner gives an answer, you just don't, no, that's not correct. You recognize where the child comes from, and then know what to help. So of all the things that you have said, my takeaway, and they were very good suggestions, but my takeaway is that our attitude towards embracing this child into this new environment is key. If we have the right attitude, the right heart, if we believe that what we are going to do and how we can support this child is and we're doing it with the right heart, not like I will teach you my language and that's the only language, but if we come with the right attitude, that knowledge that we gain from learning this child's language or learning parts of the child's language or where the child comes from and using that, the skills and the attitudes and the resources, all of that will create as we said, the learning environment that enhances the different languages that we have in our classes and the child's language. Because ultimately the aim is for the child to have an environment that they can learn. So we don't have the situation where in the beginning when we started, this child is frustrated and the child is lost in the classroom. As a teacher, that's our job. And our attitudes are very, very important in enhancing this environment.
Thank you for listening to the podcast of All Means All. In the show notes, there is a link to the chapter in the open textbook. There you can find the transcript of the video and more information on the topic.